Hey moms, it's Laura Ollinger. Welcome to the Positively Healthy Mom podcast. This episode is part 2 of my conversation with the Reverend Dr. Lisa Thompson, who is passionate about wholeness in mind, body, and spirit. In my work and what I do, I specialize working with teenagers and their moms. And so what I find is everything you just described is a lot of what teenage girls specifically, but boys too, have their own version of it. Right. For them, it's the sports, if they didn't play well, girls play sports, but I hear the language a little bit more from my son. So I have 2 boys, 2 girls. So the language I hear when my boys are beating themselves up, if they're in that negative cycle, it's because they didn't make the right play or they didn't play well enough in the game. Right. That's what I hear from the boys. From the girls, what I hear is, oh, it's a social thing, right? I got left out. I didn't get spoken to today by this group of girls, right? And so it's funny how they're all judging themselves, based off of their specific, interests, but also it's a little bit of a gender issue. So what I want to switch over to is just how can we teach this to our children when they are in a world and in the culture where everything that you described is really, or that we talked about, is like the antithesis of what you're trying to teach. So I do want to actually, let me let you answer that, right? Because it's like you and I are like, whoa, we're on the same wavelength with this, but yet our kids are immersed in a culture that is not. So what do you do about that?
Such a great question. And so in my world right now, literally, with the sports and the social things and all the things, right? This again, I think, is about modeling for our kids. And so if I am hoping that my son is going to be able to authentically handle not being played in a position, or he struck out, or he didn't play enough minutes, and not take the entire loss of a game, or I'm not good enough to play on this team, onto himself. The words that I say on the way to the game, at the house, preparing, whatever, are really, really important. Because I can't pump him up the whole game rests on you. You can't make a mistake. All of this stuff. I can't say that and then be like, you did your best, buddy, afterwards. It's totally contradictory, right? So the message that I offer throughout, his being, I guess, whether we're watching games or he's on his way to the game, or we're watching other people and supporting them, it has to be consistent for times after to be taken seriously. And so your authenticity and how you approach it is going to come through and reflect, right? So, and it's tricky because there's so many pieces to it. So I try to go into before game time, you do your best. And if that means you strike out, that's okay. You swung for the ball, If you didn't make that play isn't what made your team lose, because the reality is it is a team, and everyone on that field or that court has an opportunity to make a shot and miss shots. Now, remember your favorite player, Zane, does he have stats where he's ever missed a shot or struck out or made an error? Do you know of any perfect athlete? Then how, as a 10-year-old, would you expect, and this is where it comes into the humility and the humbling part again, why are you expecting yourself to be perfect? Do you still love that athlete? Do you still want to watch that athlete play? You're learning from them, and you have an opportunity in all of those games to say, okay, that didn't work like I wanted it to. What's next? Because if I stay in that space, and I know you agree with me on this, but if just even as adults, when we get really anxious about things and just riled up and are in our minds, we can feel it in our bodies, right? Now imagine we're expected to then step back up to the plate or get ready for the next play. Like if it's taking over, like we're not going to be able to play our best as who we are in our wholeness, like our mind. And this is where the body, mind, spirit balance is really important. We're letting our mind rule and speak to our body in a way that's like a word that my daughters and I use, confuzzling, right? It's just like, this doesn't make any sense. You're not doing good and this blows my mind, but it's very prevalent in the world. Like, well, if you talk down to yourself, you're going to get pumped up and ready to go. I'm like, I have not experienced that for myself. Like, it doesn't normally work that way. When I talk down to myself, I don't then get into a better headspace and a better space physically. But for some reason, I think I'm doing what society told me I'm supposed to do and showing everyone that I'm upset about what I've done. And so, I don't know. I just think that's such a challenge.
Yeah.
What we do as adults, whether we're playing sports or participating in things that we like, playing games, playing cards, like how do we react? And it has to be consistent with the message that we are sharing with our kids. And so it's going to be a challenge if it's not.
It's true. I love your theme there of consistency because I'm not going to get the expression right, but you'll get the meaning. So I have two, friends and mentors that I follow named Kay and Shy, and they have this expression that says, when you squeeze an orange, whatever's inside of it will come out. So if there's orange juice inside of it, orange juice will come out, right? And so it's like when you're under pressure, whatever's inside of you will come out. And so that's why I am doing, like, that is the crux of why I'm doing this show, The Positively Healthy Mom, because it's all about getting healthy within ourselves as moms so that when we are squeezed, which is every single day, then what comes out is what we want to come out and what we want to model for our kids. It's the things we do want, not the things we don't, right?
Yes.
And so I loved kind of your analogies about, how you talk to your son about sports and about the plays and if things didn't go right, and so one thing I would add to that, which I'm sure you have, is, always what did you learn from that experience?
Oh, yeah.
That's a question I always ask my clients because they'll come to me with lots of stories of things that are terrible. And I say, well, what is good about this experience? And inevitably they'll find something. Sometimes it takes them a while. And inevitably, I'll say, what did you learn from this experience? And they'll always find something. And I bet if you ask your son that question, which it sounds like you have many, many times, he would have an answer for that. And so that's what that's doing is, the funny thing is that is what I'm trained in, which is called neuroencoding. That's what neuroencoding is reprogramming our minds to be the best version of ourselves, to default to the best version. And so, we all have this kind of baseline as far as who we are in our lives, like this mood, who we are as a personality, right? And so the idea is to raise this baseline to a more positive version. So that way, when something does go wrong, you regress back to the positive, the higher baseline, right? Yeah. And so it sounds like that's what you've taught yourself or you've learned, and you're doing that with your kids. And I'm just in awe. I think that's amazing. And I wish that, we could kind of continue to spread this message because it's our, society is suffering, our teenagers are suffering, and they're so hard on themselves and they're really hard on each other. I mean, mean. Like, I don't know if you have any stories that you might share today about things that have happened to your kids that you're just like, how can one kid say that to another? Like, how are they learning this? And I think we know the answer. We know how they're learning this, but like, it's like, what do you do in those moments when I'm like, I guess the question is, have your kids been spoken to in a really mean way? And what did you do about that?
Yes, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. and it's, I don't know, so many things are spinning in my mind thinking, you had thought back in the conversation, how do you talk to your friends? Like, how do you challenge your friends when they're in a negative, and sometimes I just kind of pause because when you're having lunch with your friends or, at a party, for kids or at the game or whatever, I try to listen to the word or the concern or whatever, and then think, well, but what if it was something different, and I said just the other day to someone that they had expressed something, I can't even remember. And I've had to do this to myself. I wonder if sometimes the way we perceive people is not in any way what they would intend.
Totally.
But we, and sometimes it's something as simple as that. Like, I have taken this whole situation and perceived it so personally and as an attack. And, but like, what are the chances that that was really the case?
Exactly.
And just being able to kind of let go of things, whether or not it really was true. Right? And so that's just touching the surface of how I would perhaps interact with my friends or family. As far as
I love that. Can I pause you right there? Can you put a pin in your next thought? I love what you just said, because, we do take things personally. And that's something that I've learned in my journey, is that whatever somebody is bringing into a conversation, that's their stuff, right? Mm-hmm. That's their past, that's their history, whatever that is. And so that's what the lens is. That's what they're viewing it through. And so no matter what is said to you, there has to be some distance or space that we give that conversation and say, whatever that person just said, that's really saying more about them than it is about me. Even if they're saying something to me, that's about them. That's who they are. That's what struggles they are going through. And that's what, when I talk to my teenage clients, I explain, we have a lot of times where we're dealing with some kind of mean girl behavior or bully behavior. And I say that I can guarantee you has nothing to do with you. That's about what's going inside with them. They're having a need to feel more significant in their lives. They're in pain. And so they're trying to transmute their pain to you, right? All these things. And so I love just kind of, you're saying, how do we bring this conversation to a friendship if you're, experiencing something? And I think what you said was step one is to realize that not whatever they might have said is not personal, and that you realize, it's a different, everybody has their own interpretation. Mm-hmm. And then, what would be your next thought to that? What would be the step two to, having this conversation?
So what I've noticed in step two is there is often resistance to that. Whether it's around the lunch table or in the stands or whatever. And they're just specific specific things that come to my mind. And I'm like, this is so strange that this is being resisted. And it is much more comfortable, I think, for us to feel and justify our angst and frustration and our criticism, and having someone come alongside and to use your word, put a pin in it and say, what if there's something else going on and we don't need to be this critical or whatever? And so at that point, it depends on the response you get, I would say, step two is. And if there's a bit of resistance, sometimes it's just staying present and calm, present and positive, and not reacting to the resistance. And sometimes it brings up more resistance and just anger that you're like, I don't even know, but you have to be comfortable in not being appreciated or liked in that moment.
Oh my gosh, what you just said. Okay, that's the quote of the show. That's the quote of the show. I love that. That's the takeaway for me. And I have a feeling that would be a takeaway for other people.
It's hard. It's really hard. And you model that not only for the other adults that are around, but you model that for the kids that are in the stands or the kids that are at the playground or whatever with you, like you continue to be that model. The minute you fall into the long side with the complaining and the critiquing and that, your authority to be that alternative voice is compromised. So part of like how to deal with the bullying, I would say this kind of leads into that, is what have my girls seen me do? And it has to be authentic. They don't see a perfect mom, right? Like they see me get frustrated. They see me get upset. I am honest with them when I have reached my limits. I've reached my limit this morning with one of my girls, and she just, wanted to exchange some clothes. I'm like, I am setting a boundary. We are not doing everything you want to do the moment you want to do it. I actually have things going on in a day as well. And it was just like, this is me too. I have a life. I have feelings and emotions, and I have energy, and I have lack of energy. And I probably wasn't as calm as I could be when I shared all of that with her, right? And I was able to then say, I wasn't as calm as I could be, in different terms, but to be humble and to say, that wasn't awesome how that went down. I love you. This would have helped me to have that conversation with you. Like I wasn't ready to perfectly manage every demand as a mother of this household today, because I expended so much energy yesterday in the heat and whatever. Like I didn't have all of my stuff together, and that's okay. Like, I think that's okay. And I think kids need to be able to see that. Totally. And so when we are authentic in those moments of how we deal with stress, it's important, because then they're also going to see us be authentic when, again, parents are talking. Parents talk a lot around kids. I've noticed, like, it is excessive, the amount of talking, like whether it is, just parents of their own children or other people's parents talking around other people's kids. There's so much information for these kids to feel out and decide what to take with them. They're being influenced in so many ways, right? So what does my mom do when that's happening? Is she participating? Is she diffusing it? Is she, what does my dad do? And what is their energy in this space? And so that teaches our kids more than any, let's sit down and talk about bullying. And I didn't realize, because of course we do that, right? And so does the school. But I found out recently about a rumor, totally blew my mind, set me spinning this fall, that one of my daughters, who had gotten the lead in her 4th grade play, and she got the lead in her 6th grade play. And there was a rumor going around last spring that like we had paid for her to get that position. And I can smile about it now, but I was not smiling. Like my heart started racing. I'm like, what does that say about these people, how they perceive us as parents, that is what we would do? What does that say about how they perceive the talents and gifts of my daughter, which I think she can hold her own? What does that say about the musical director, how they assume she operates, that if she's going to take payment or something? Like I was just, and my daughter hadn't said anything to me about it last spring, but I just kind of like heard it in passing. I was like, what? This has to be dealt with. It has to, So I talked to the dean of the middle school, and she hadn't heard it. She's like, what do you want to do, Lisa? I was like, I just feel like it's not okay. Like, it needs to be like, is this why she doesn't want to try out? And, you know, like, what's going on? She hasn't even talked to me about this. So she drew my daughter in and said, hey, I just, just want to check in with you. And like the best thing happened, that my daughter was like, yeah, that was last spring. It's fine. Like, it didn't faze her. It didn't bother her. It didn't have the ability to penetrate her concept of self and of worth and of being. And I just, like, in that moment, like, realized where all of my angst was she's going to think she's not good enough, that like we have to pay for her, or like, and that's not it at all. Right. But she didn't go to that place where she thought she wasn't good enough. And I was just so thankful, because that's not what any of us want for our children ever. Right. We don't want them to feel less than good enough and worthy. And so, like, my initial reaction was like, we've got to shut this down. I want to address it with everyone. Like, I should have an assembly. I'm going to speak to us all. And
you're going full on tiger mama mode. Yep. I know the feeling.
And it's best that didn't happen, Yeah. But I thought there's something along the way that has allowed her to experience that. And my older daughter too, she's experienced some not awesome things. And she's able to handle it. And, I check in. How is your heart feeling?
I love that question.
Yeah. How does your heart feel about this? Like, there was a big group of girls that went to homecoming with their dates together, and she was not invited. And there are not that many girls in the grade. Like, how are you doing? I'm fine. It's like,
oh, good.
Good.
Okay.
I'm so glad, because like, I think sometimes we have a tendency to like relive our teenage years and our angst, and she's not reliving it for me. So that is good, that she's confident in being who she is, which is beautiful and awesome, and she's not everyone's person, and she's okay with that. Where I'm like, oh, we should be everyone's, like, it should all work, and that's how we're comfortable, and all the things. But like, reality is that's just not, like, we're in the same sorority and we reconnected and everything, but I wasn't best friends with 140 girls.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's okay. We have our people that we connect with, and being confident in that, and not thinking I am not enough because I don't connect with everyone. And again, it just goes back to modeling. Like, that's how are we doing life? How are we participating? What are our words about our relationships? And when we see other people, are we critiquing others just because they're different? Or are we pointing things out, like, I really like how they did this. That was beautiful. Or, I don't know. I just went so many trails.
Yeah, no, I love it. So the first point I wanted to highlight that you said was all about authenticity. And I love that. I absolutely love it for so many reasons. First of all, it's just real, right? The thing is, I teach a lot of kind of emotional regulation to parents, and it's so important to kind of be regulated. And it's impossible to be regulated 100% of the time, nor do I even think that's a good idea, because our kids don't have that skill yet, the high level of emotional regulation that adults are capable of. And so we want to model those times when we are facing adversity or challenges, how we're dealing with that. And what I always say is, a lot of people, they're very averse to conflict, especially conflict with a spouse, conflict with a teenager, right? It freaks them out. And that's probably something from their childhood that they're projecting onto that relationship. They think conflict is just inherently bad. And what I say is conflict is a teaching moment, right? It's on so many levels on how to repair. Like, I specialize kind of in the repair part of the conflict. So you did wonderfully this morning. I am not taking these clothes back today because I have my own life, And then you said later, or whenever, I'm sorry, maybe I didn't handle that perfectly. And guess what? That's okay, because you're human and you're modeling, right, how to feel our feelings, and you're not blocking them, right? The last thing we want to do is walk around like being disconnected. Like your whole, philosophy is wholeness, mind, body, and spirit. And it's connecting, the head to the heart and the heart to the spirit, right? It's all connected. So I loved that part. And then the next part about modeling, which is huge. That's probably why your daughter did so well with not being invited into that big homecoming group, because you've been modeling this her whole life. She's used to, and your other daughter with the situation with the play, right? She's okay with that. She's like, that was last year, I'm fine. And it's almost like you're kind of surprised, like, wow, my girls are amazing. And you're like, oh, you're like, it's working, right? I've been teaching them this their whole lives and it's working. And so that's something to celebrate. I just want to, say how I think you're just spectacular. And even here in the comments, somebody's saying, Lisa is one of my role models as a mother. You are amazing with your words. And there's some other heart emojis. And it's just so fun to see that, people see you, they value you, and they're listening to you as a leader. And, that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because I'm like, oh my gosh, you've got so much wisdom and I want to share it. So I'm so, just excited and blessed that you were able to, be part of this and have this conversation. So is there anything else, where we're running a little low on time? Like, what would be like one, I know we talked about a lot, but like, what would be the one piece of advice or wisdom if people forgot everything else we said? What would be the one thing that you would want to encourage people to walk away with?
I think whether or not you can believe it yet is to tell yourself that you are worthy, because having that kind of language, it takes practice. Because there's a society that is super excited to tell us we are not worthy. And here's why. And here's what you need to buy to make yourself worthy. Or here's what you need to do or consume. And so just to have that concept, that quick phrase that you are worthy, you are worth it, even if you aren't there yet, is a start. And to be able to say that to yourself is important before you can really offer that to other people in a way of wholeness. Because just telling someone else that doesn't, as a gift to another person, is nice and kind, but like the depth that's offered when you actually believe it of yourself before you offer it to another person changes it in ways that I don't think you can, pinpoint exactly, but I think it gives it authority that,
I call it a vibe.
Okay. Well, that's the thing, right? The
vibe. Off a vibe, right? And I have a mentor that says, physician, heal thyself.
Yes.
So as a coach and mentor, I am obligated morally and ethically to heal myself, so therefore I can be a better version of myself for others, for my own kids, but for my clients, right? And so I have to go through everything I ever talk to my clients about. I've gone through that. I've been through that. I've gone through that thought process. I figured it out. I figured out how to be a better, think of it in a better way. Think of myself with more worth, with more confidence, whatever that might be, whatever the topic is. So I think that's awesome. So whether you believe it or not, is what you said, to start saying that you are worthy, and eventually you'll believe yourself.
That's the hope, right? I mean, I just feel like the inner dialogue is always how we're not enough, what we need to do better, always a critique. That's so common.
Especially with moms. That's what moms do.
I'm not doing good enough. I mean, I even wanted to ask and it's still a challenge, even though it's in my vocabulary. I still wanted to ask my daughter this morning, like, you want to tell me how I'm just the worst mom? I didn't. Stopped myself. But, we just can't do everything perfectly, and that's okay. Like, it's okay. We can still be worthy being human beings. Like, it's just, just starting that practice of offering blessing in our vocabulary to self is hard enough, but like that's the start. And then you go from there. I did want to show you something really fast. I know we're super short on time.
Okay.
But as far as the idea of body, mind, and spirit and connectedness. So like if you like my super skilled circles, and how they're connected, but you can see how they all have individual spaces, right? But then they all come together in this one spot.
Yeah.
So this is a traditional look at the Trinity. If you are a Christian, where you have creator, redeemer, sustainer, Father, Son, Spirit. And then the idea is that without any one piece, you don't have the fullness of God. It takes all three of those for the wholeness and the fullness of God. So I really like this visual for wholeness, where you have a circle of body, of mind, and of spirit. And there are parts of it in each one that are going to exist on their own. And then there's a part where they all come together in like this beautiful space, and they pull one and the other just right, where you can feel that wholeness.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and this is really where it is, and I've had to do this a lot for myself, because my mind and my body and my spirit are not always aligned. And it's having grace with the fact that they're not. And being true to myself of, so I need to let go a little here and focus a little more here, so that we can get back on track. And I know that's like a whole other box.
Okay, well, that's the perfect way to leave it, because we are just out of time. So Lisa, how can people find you after today?
On my Facebook group, Adventures of Health and Wholeness, and by my email, ldwthompson@gmail.com. And I'm just not super official, but I'm out there.
Okay. Well, they can find you on your Facebook group, and I'll be sure to tag you. So thank you so much, Lisa. I really appreciate it. And I would love to have you back again. We can just find so much more to talk about. So I so appreciate it. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Positively Healthy Mom podcast, because there's no manual for the hardest job in the world. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends.